Hello everyone, Shaina Ashley here. This video showcases the conclusion of my haunted story time. If you missed parts 1 or 2, go ahead and check the description of this video where I will provide links for you. After this video has concluded, I will move on to fan art for things that I have not done before, so we will return to our regularly scheduled program of anime review. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the art. When we last left off in part 2, I was on my way to meet with a psychic to hopefully confirm that I was experiencing something supernatural and that it was not all in my head. So let's just jump right back into the story. We drove to a family-owned restaurant where Marie had her own room and saw clients there twice a week. We arrived a little early and decided to wait in the bar to share some calamari. I was nervous to the point of vomiting. I just kept thinking that if Marie didn't see anything and nothing was attached to me, that it really meant I was insane. I made Jane go do her session first because I was just so nervous. She came back and said it was a nice visit, and it was my turn. The designated section of the restaurant was in its own corner, some 10 feet or so behind those folding walls you can put up. Marie was sitting there looking like any other pleasant old lady, and I sat down across from her. She asked me to say my name and my birthday, so I told her. She had her eyes closed. She paused for a bit, asked me to repeat my answer, and I did. I gave her no other information whatsoever, and neither did Jane. She opened her eyes and said, "The first thing I can see is that you are sensitive, like me. And the second is that there's an immensely dangerous being attached to you." I broke down and began to sob. I was so relieved to hear that I wasn't crazy, and even telling this story now is bringing up tears, sorry. But Marie seemed very stern with me. She wouldn't tell me what sort of figure it was or who it was. I asked her, how do I get rid of it? She paused and said, "I'm being told that it's coming from something in your room. Something small. It's a deck of tarot cards." I was stunned because I had completely forgotten about those cards for years and never did anything with them. They had just been sitting on my shelf collecting dust. Marie told me that this entity is connected to that item and that they need to be bound and buried. She paused. "Buried on holy ground," she said. I never told her anything again, let alone that years ago a boy had given me years prior, claiming that they were his Polish grandmothers. She next gave me instructions on binding them. I was to wrap them in thick paper, tie it with twine, and pray to St. Michael. Then bury them as soon as possible. She also recommended that I wear black tourmaline on my person and never take it off. And I told her that I had some experience with crystals and black tourmaline had always given me headaches in the past. And she said that's because something didn't want me to wear it. And finally, to burn white sage and speak St. Michael's prayer 3 times in a row, twice daily. It seems like a lot to remember, but glad to finally have affirmation that this was not in my head. I went home feeling more hopeful than I had been in a while. Next available morning, I went out to buy myself a shovel and drove to the nearest church I could find with some sort of grounds that had a secluded area I could isolate myself in, obviously to avoid answering the question of what are you doing here. However, it was very early spring and in my area, still freezing outside. I did not anticipate the ground being frozen when I purchased my little shovel and began to panic. At this point, I noticed I had 3 missed calls from Marie, and she left voicemails sounding very worried, and I noted that Two of them were from the night before. She just kept saying that she couldn't stop thinking about my situation and asking me repeatedly if I had done it yet, if I had buried the cards, and her anxious tone did not help my nerves. Then I suddenly remembered a tiny shrine in the woods that a boy had taken me to so that we could take pictures there. I remembered it looking like it was very, very old, at least 100 years old, and the area I was in was definitely older still. So it was entirely possible that this was 200 plus years old. But if I remembered correctly, it definitely seemed to be Christian. So I made my way over to where I was pretty sure that the shrine was, but I couldn't exactly remember. I had a vague idea. This led me to get lost for an hour or so in the woods, heading completely the wrong direction for a good stretch, but finally found it. As I said, it was very small, really only large enough for maybe 3 or 4 persons to kneel at prayer, but it was quite tall and made of now crumbling stone, and it was sort of built into this small mound or hill, which is probably why it is still standing. The stones, as I said, had crumbled, but in such a way that it left gaps large enough for me to be able to drop the cards into the wall. Now, I paused here. I couldn't get a hold of Marie on the phone just then, and I only had so much free time left in my day, especially because I had wasted so much time getting lost. And my fear was that if I dropped the cards into the wall and it did not work, there was no way I would be able to get them back out again. I'm sure I was increasingly anxious too, because the entity attached to the cards was also getting mad and worried. I paced for a few more minutes, paused, tried digging again, still rubbish, then held my breath and deciding, after reciting Michael's prayer one more time, to let go of the parcel containing the cards. I felt a rush of dizziness wash over me, and I instantly doubled over and vomited exactly 6 times. When I set myself upright, I felt amazing. I felt so light and free and hopeful and happy and relieved and proud of myself and shocked and so many things, but none of them were fear and the bad thoughts that I had been experiencing for the past few years. They were gone. Later that evening, I was able to get a hold of Marie, and I told her what I did and asked her if she thinks it worked, even though I already had felt that it had. She said, yes, I'm being told that it has worked. And that was it for a while. I didn't have any more spooky happenings. The voices in my head were still destructive at times, but it was all my voice again. After a few more weeks, I requested Marie one more time to see me because she never did tell me what had a hold of me out of fear of my fear. When we met up, she told me that there was an old hag who had her nails dug deep into my back, and that she only wanted for me to kill myself so that she could collect my soul. It all made sense. The old woman shuffling my tarot cards at night, the dreams of knowing she was there but just behind me and always only just out of sight. But I remembered also that Marie had acknowledged that I have the ability to sense things, and I had one more question. I told her that I have always been this way, and that in the past I seem to have a knack for it. And she sternly warned me, saying, your soul right now is like the sail of a ship that has just been through a terrible storm. If you go back out again, you will not make it. And that if I were to dabble in any more of these things, that I will not make it into heaven. And that's where I have questions. I think that she meant that my soul would be taken rather than I would be corrupted. But her branch of practice seemed to somehow encompass both Christianity and tarot, crystals, and incense. I know that there is a balance, and even if you don't believe in God, after experiencing what I have, I definitely believe in demons. So I suppose that the only way to glean hope with this knowledge is to assume that there is an equally inherent good being or beings. Either way, I dropped tarot. I gave all my other decks away and stopped paying attention to my astrology. Well, with astrology for a little while. I still dabble. But about 5 years have passed, and I do time and again feel the pull to express myself in witchy ways, but I no longer know what's safe. After all, a boy gave me his granny's cards, and I got haunted and eventually possessed for a period of 8 years. So who is to say what is safe? I want to thank all of you who have made it this far with me and listened to my story where I was able to get a little bit vulnerable. This was me dipping my toe into a different water of other branches that I have interest in. I will, of course, be going back to strictly anime unless I hear from any of you out there who, similarly like me, enjoy a good story, a good plot, and a little bit of the supernatural. If you do, definitely subscribe because we should be friends. But in my conclusion, I am not disapproving or warning really against the practice of tarot cards or any of the supernatural things where you can reach out and kind of express yourself on a spiritual plane. I'm just relaying my message and the warnings that I was given, and kind of like not the worst case scenario, but definitely not the best. So please, if you're interested in practicing these things, do so with caution, do your research, check with a friend, and always stay safe. That's the most important thing. My name is Shaina Ashley, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.